problem.
Yep. So looking forward to your program today also. And I must apologize for not thanking anyone for the certificates I got, because you made me busy and I couldn't respond to any of the emails.
Well, we're so happy that you completed it.
Yes, yes. So very soon I will be responding to all those emails.
Great. Wonderful.
Thank you, Kara. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And for Rohita as well, and the whole team of GLC, including Anna and all of them.
I just wanted to remind all participants we'll be starting shortly, so please make sure that your microphone is unmuted.
We got some more adobo and some couscous going on here. Yeah, I'm glad it's the morning, because if it were 4 o'clock in the afternoon for me, I'd really be hungry. This would be even harder to get through. You're right.
All right. What do you think, Karen? Should we start?
I think so.
Okay, sounds good. So once again, good morning, good evening, everyone. And I just wanted to once again thank you all for making the switch the last moment. We discovered that unfortunately WebEx, as much as we love it, would not have allowed us to have this webinar today. Like, its functionality is a little bit limited, and yet thank you so much for being so accommodative and making that switch quickly. So I would like to once again remind you that this session is being recorded, and we will share the recording with you probably next week. Please keep yourself muted if you don't mind. So we will give you the floor. So I think I just lost the screen. Am I still sharing?
Yep, you're sharing. We see the COVID special category winner slide.
Give me a second. I think it just disappeared on my side. Oh, all right, sounds good. So yes, and I just wanted to start probably with some exciting news. So this is the new platform. I'm so not used to it. Okay, yeah, so back to the exciting news. So last month, it was announced that the GLC team, our own Grow and Connect team, became a winner in the IFC-wide program that is dedicated to celebrating exemplary knowledge behaviors and practices. So our team received what is called the Nobel Award in the special COVID-19 category. So when the world was hit by the pandemic, the GLC team responded immediately. We decided to equip micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises with skills and provide advisory support to minimize the damage and also help businesses adjust to the new normal. So our team created some interactive webinars on finance, on marketing and digital transformation. And these webinars were delivered to almost 15,000 MSMEs through 41 financial institutions in 31 countries worldwide, many of which are conflict-affected or low-income countries. And that was possible, of course, thanks to our GLC training community, including our own master trainers. So Margaret Jackson, Aisa Tudau, Fatma Elmawi, Ashraf Shanuda, Laban Mawungwe, Megdi Shahed, and other trainers. So we would like to thank all all the participating financial institutions, many of which are attending today's webinar, as well as our colleagues at IFC and the GLC trainers for joining us in this initiative and creating the impact when it was most needed. In other news, if you got a chance to visit the calendar section of the GLC website, you probably noticed that we added a number of major events for you to visit, including the conferences. So this is one of them. The Asian Development Bank is organizing the International Skills Forum, where they will discuss the challenges of improving learning for all and reducing skills mismatches. This forum is starting in August, pretty soon, so please make sure to register soon if you're interested, and participation is free. The next event that we added to the calendar is the Adobe e-learning World Conference again. So this conference is being organized for e-learning specialists such as yourself. Again, participation is free, and they will be offering product talks, certificate workshops, and masterclasses. So please make sure to visit GLC to find out how you can join and whether this is going to be of interest to you. So another conference that is coming up in October is on vocational and entrepreneurial training. And finally, our own conference, which is called Beyond the Known. So this conference is being organized by our team together with the International Labour Organization, together with the GIZ, EBRD, Swiss Contact, and other partners. And here with me today is my colleague, Graham Harris, who would like to say a few words about this conference. Graham?
Thanks so much, Anna, and welcome to everybody. As Anna said, my name is Graham Harris. I'm based in Singapore, and I'm IFC's co-lead for the GrowLearn Connect platform. So just wanted to very briefly introduce the Beyond the Known conference. This is the second year that this has been run. And as mentioned, it's a joint partnership between IFC and a number of other kind of major organizations, very much with a focus on entrepreneurship promotion and MSME development. So you can now register for this event. Again, its registration is free. The date of the conference is for 26th, 27th, 28th of October. And if you just take note of the link, www.btk2021.org, you can find out additional information on the website, and you can register as a participant for the event. And it would be wonderful to have as many people from our network as possible. It will be at a Sub-Saharan Africa, Middle East friendly time, and it will be a relatively friendly time for Asia. Secondly, as part of this conference, IFC together with EBRD are co-leading a track. So we'll have a number of discussions and presentations around topics specifically relating to entrepreneurship and digital and access to finance. These are the three kind of key kind of themes of the work of the conference. If you have a interesting idea, or if you've been involved in a program that covers one of these topics, potentially relating to access to financial services, in the nexus between that and skills development, MSME development, but also in the other areas, then you may want to consider submitting a kind of call for solution. In total, we have six sessions that IFC and EBRD are jointly running. I would very much like to open up events to your participation. Thanks a lot.
Moved platforms, and to access it, you need to click on the link.
Thanks, Anna. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Graham. And now back to our today's webinar, which essentially will conclude the series of webinars on conversion of face-to-face training to the online learning. But first of all, let me introduce our today's speaker, Karen Feeley, and I'm pretty sure that most of you are already know Karen. So Karen Feeley is a global business learning specialist. She's also a global master trainer, and she is the IFC LPI assessor, among numerous other credentials that she has obtained over her career as a training professional. So Karen has over 25 years of experience in analyzing learning and training needs, creating learning solutions, designing courses, training trainers, and managing training projects. She has advised Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, and multilateral organizations on workplace learning, and that was since 1996, if I recall correctly. In 2009, Karen Feeley founded her own company, Comprehensive Learning Solutions. So that's a global corporate training consulting firm. With that, I would like to welcome Karen. Karen, welcome back to the GLC webinar series.
Thank you, Anna. Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm going to share my screen here. Let me see. Okay, and let's go right over there. Okay, well, welcome everybody to creating the 24/7 classroom. And I want to start off with a question that might seem just a little bit far-fetched, but I want to get your creativity going first thing in this session. And that question is this: how is choosing a training delivery method like buying dinner from a restaurant? And go ahead and write your answers in the chat box. So if you don't know where the chat box is, if you scroll down, if you move your cursor to the bottom of the window, the toolbar will appear. Click on the one with the speech box, and then that will bring up your chat box. You can type your answer at the bottom and hit enter and it'll appear. So I'm truly asking you, how do you think that choosing a training delivery method is like buying dinner from a restaurant? And Betsy says, well, it's like ordering from a menu. You're absolutely correct. There's a whole lot of options available. And definitely need to look at the menu. Absolutely, there's a lot. We're going to talk about a lot of those options on the menu today. You got to make your choice. And I heard somebody else say that, will it meet my expectations? Yeah, you sure hope so. And if you choose well, it usually does. And Michael is saying there's a lot of choices. Absolutely. And the food has got to be good. Right. Absolutely. You're definitely hitting on the variety issue. And that variety issue, you have to consider your budget, says Ahmed. Very good. Good. We choose based on the reputation of the restaurant. Absolutely. Just like you choose your training based on the reputation of the company. And that's correct. And there's also another way that it's similar. And that is when you go to dinner and you decide to buy from a restaurant, you first have to ask yourself, among all the other choices, you have to ask yourself, do I want to eat my food with the other diners? In other words, do I want to eat it in the restaurant? Or do I want to take it home and eat it on my own? And similarly, when you're creating online courses, you first have to choose whether you want the learner and the trainer to interact with each other at the same time. And in learning terminology, we have a name for this. In fact, we have two names. So when you eat together, if you will, when the participants and the trainer interact at the same time, we call that instructor-led or synchronous training. And the nice thing about it is that participants can get their answers directly at the moment when they have a question. But the downside is that the training has to happen at a specific preset time in order for this to work. And that's fine if everybody is in the same face-to-face classroom, but you can also have instructor-led training on the internet, just like we are doing today. And when you start to see that everybody is here from Maryland and Singapore and Ghana and Pakistan and Afghanistan, well, finding that same time starts to become a little bit more challenging. So the alternative is self-study training, also called asynchronous training. And in asynchronous training, the participants do not need to be on at the same time. They do not need to interact in real time with the trainer. In fact, they may not interact at all with the trainer. But the beauty of it is that they can take that training whenever it is convenient for them. So if you go back to our analogy, you've already decided, if you decide to do self-study training, that you want delivery. And that's what we're going to focus on in this session today. We're going to focus only on online self-study courses. By the way, everything that we are discussing today, and even more, is available on the Grow, Learn, Connect website in a self-study course that you can take at your convenience. And here you see the link to that course. This course, take it whenever you like. It has more information than what you're going to hear today. Think of today as kind of like a highlight session. So what we'll do is we'll start out by looking at the menu. We'll talk about what are the different delivery method options, what's on the choice list, and you'll see samples and you'll learn about them. And then once you know what's on the menu, we'll talk about how do you decide which to get. And then once you have decided, then we'll talk about what you need to do differently when you're creating an online training course versus an instructor-led course. And I should say when you're developing a self-study course versus an instructor-led course. I should also mention that after this course, you're going to receive a one-page summary sheet of the main points. So if you want more details, you can either go to that online course, take the whole course, download that one-page summary, or wait till the end of this session and we'll email it to you. Now, as you've already noticed, this is going to be an interactive webinar. And because of this, I always like to start out by stating out loud a couple of expectations around how we expect each other to behave. So I have a couple, and then if you want to add some, you can. So here are my ground rules. Number one, participate. This session is for you. The more you interact, the more you'll get out of it. So please do write in the chat box and answer the questions. Ask questions, share your ideas. We love to learn from each other. And because we are learning from each other, of course, we ask you to be respectful of each other. And finally, most of the interactions today are going to be via chatting. So please mute your microphones. Are there any other rules that you would like to add? If so, please write them in the chat box. Okay, I'm not seeing any new rules coming up. So can we all agree to abide by these rules? If so, please type yes in the chat box. All right, there we go. Thank you. Well, thank you. Well, I'm seeing lots of yeses. And at this point, I'm going to turn off my video because I'm going to be showing you a lot of stuff. And I really want the focus to be on what's on the screen. So I will turn this back on when we get to question periods. But for now, I'm going to save a little bandwidth. All right, well, as I said, once you decide where you're going to eat, The next choice is, what are you going to eat? And in other words, we want to look now at the delivery methods, our menu. And when it comes to self-study learning, there are more options than you probably realize. So take a look at this screen. This slide shows you the range of the most options that are currently on the marketplace. Now, keep in mind that new technologies constantly arise that might bring new options to the public in the near future. So think of this as just a snapshot in time. I'm guessing that many of you training professionals out there already know what a lot of these are. So rather than going through each one in order, I want to focus on what is of most interest to you. So everybody take a look at this list. Which of these do you feel that you would like to either have me explain in a little bit more detail, or that you would like to see a sample of? And go ahead and write that option in the chat box. And I'm going to discuss these in the order that you tell me. So which of these do you not know what it is, or do you want more information on? Go ahead and write it in the chat box. Okay. So I think the first one I saw there was the interactive. Right, well, we'll go over and look at interactive slides. And interactive slides are really self-study learning, pop over there, that is embedded in a viewer that presents slides in a horizontal progression. So what does this mean? Well, let me show you an example. Okay, so I believe now you can, oops, wrong one. Let's try that one more time. There you go. I think you can see my screen, maybe. Maybe not. Hold on one second. All right, let's try that one more time. There we go. Okay, so this one happens to be about the solar system. And as you see, you can navigate as you like. There's the next button that can move it on. And you can have text, and you can have graphics. You can have people click wherever they want. Depending how fancy you want to be, you can have animation in here. And the nice thing about this, you can even have like questions in here. There's a solar system quiz here at the end, right? So now it says, arrange the following planets in the correct order, starting from the closest to the sun. So that would be Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. You can move these around. And here's where I always lose it. I know Jupiter's the last one, but I always get these guys confused. So I'm going to try putting it this way and see if that's correct. Oh, I got it wrong. But you can do these kind of things, and you can make these as fancy as possible. What's nice about these is that they have a pretty good wow factor to them. You can make these really exciting to do. And there's a lot of interactivity. You can make these as high or as low interactivity as you like. What's really nice about this, and this is particularly good if you are converting from face-to-face training, is with these interactive slides, you create the presentation in PowerPoint, and then you use this software to kind of suck in all of those slides so you don't have to create everything from scratch. So in terms of the cost of developing this way, it's actually, I would say it's not that expensive. It's kind of a moderate cost because you do have to buy the software and you have to learn how to use it. But other than that, it's not too bad, and it's a pretty quick learning curve. So, and then these would be delivered over the web, either through a web page or through a learning management software. So that's very briefly what the interactive slides are. And Anna, what else did people want to see? Can you tell me what came up second?
So I think in infinite scroll online learning modules.
Ah, yes, the Isol. I'm not surprised about that. It's a funny name. So these are similar to the interactive slides, but they run in a vertical, an online vertical fashion. So let me give you a sample of what that looks like. And I'll take you over to the one for this course. This is creating the 24/7 course online. And so here you see, you can scroll down, you can click to a link of a sample. You can click on all these different things and they open up. And then when you want to move around, you can move around. It keeps track over here of what you're seeing. You can move from one section to the other. It's got text. Here, this is kind of fun. This one has a little bit of a dialogue. It's like a discussion going on. And then it'll ask you at certain points to choose which is the best answer. And you can click on one and it gives you kind of a reaction based on what you chose. When you get down to the bottom of this, you can, or anywhere in here, but on this one, it's at the bottom, you have knowledge checks. And in these knowledge checks, you can ask questions, you can have it, you can have people choose whichever one they want. Apparently I chose this one already. But here you go. So you ask the question, you would pick an answer, right? And then you submit it. Look at that, I got it correct. How do you like that? So that's what it is. But the big thing about them is that they run pretty much vertically. In terms of level of interactivity, you can make this more or less interactive. It's good for content that's anywhere from easy to kind of moderately complex information. And it's also delivered over or a learning management system. Now the effort on this is a little bit greater because you have to buy a software that creates it and you have to learn how to program it and what the options are. So it does take a little bit more. It's not the quickest, but once you learn it, it's pretty quick. The nice thing is it appeals to multiple learning styles, including visual, linguistic, auditory, and even kinesthetic, because you're clicking and you're dragging and everything. So that is the infinite scroll online learning module.
Karen, sorry, we have a question in chat. What kind of software would you recommend for this option?
Let me hold off on that question for the time being. I'll come back to the questions at the end, especially on software, because it's a little bit tricky to say. But let me show you first some of the answers, and I promise I'll come back to that question in a few minutes. Anna, what was another type that people asked for?
Well, I think we got answers for pretty much every option. One of those is screencast videos. I think I saw that.
Ah, okay, yeah. So screencast videos are videos that capture what you're doing on a computer. And so this is good for teaching people how to do things on the computer. So let me show you an example of that really quickly. Okay.
A quick tutorial on how to record screencasts on Windows using PowerPoint. So I'm going to open up PowerPoint. Notice this is PowerPoint 2016. It doesn't work on previous versions. Also note that this will not work on the Mac version of PowerPoint 2016. At the moment, it's Windows only. So we can just open up a blank presentation. It's not important if you even save this file. You could open it in an existing PowerPoint.
So you get the point. So the wow factor on those really depends on who you get animating or narrating them. I will say that our friend there wasn't the most interesting fellow, but the information is good. And what's nice about these is that the learner can control the navigation. And since it's about like, how do you do something on your computer, what the learner could do is put that up on one side of the screen and have the software on the other, play a little bit, stop it, do it for real, come back, play it again. So it's kind of interactive. These used to be fairly expensive to create because you had to buy certain softwares and it was kind of hard to program. But technology has changed. And as the gentleman on the video said, you can now do this with PowerPoint 16. So it's become a much easier and cheaper option. It still takes a bit of time to create it though, because you really have to plan out where are you going to go, what data are you going to put in, what are you going to say? Because I will tell you from experience that as soon as you hit that record button and you start to do it, all of a sudden you start tripping over your tongue, you forget what you're going to say. So it takes quite a few run-throughs before you get it correct. So it does take a little bit of time, and there is some editing involved. Anna, you want to hit me with another one?
Yes, cartoon. How about this one?
Ah, the cartoon is fun. Cartoon videos, they're a lot of fun. These are usually videos that tell stories or depict emotions, but they use sophisticated graphics, movements, and sounds. So let me show you what something like that looks like. Where is that one? Okay, so this one, here we go.
Hey, this is a nice tab.
Hi friend, I am alien number 1, and we have just captured your fellow Earthling for sending irritating spam mails.
Boy, wouldn't it be great if you could do that? Just suck them up into outer space, all those spam mail guys. But this is really pretty fun and pretty neat. The wow factor on this is pretty high. And you could use this from anything from low to fairly complex information. Now, as with every video, these are not printable. And that's one of their little bit of a downside to them. The user has control over the navigation, but there's really not much interactivity on these. So that's something else to consider. Creating this is extensive and it takes time. Not only do you have to figure out what you want to say, you have to build storyboards, you need a graphic designer, you need an animation programmer. This is an expensive undertaking, frankly. And there's another option that, as long as we're talking about videos, I want to show you right now. And that is a less expensive animated video, and that's called the Whiteboard video. And the Whiteboard video uses intentionally low graphics, low animation. It's a style. It's kind of like what they did at the Khan Academy, if you're familiar with those videos. So here's the one that we created, and I'll play this for you here. So you get the idea that these are, there's some animation, but they're more basic, more cartoony. That's done intentionally. The wow factor on them is kind of medium, but it's good still for presenting anything from basic to moderately complex information. And these are much easier to create than the cartoon videos. You still need to buy a software, but the software is not as expensive. It's much easier to use once you get the hang of it. And again, they're distributed from websites or learning management systems.
Karen, one of the questions was that whether designers really need to know how to draw. Like, is it one of the skills that they must possess, or you think the software will allow them to do that seamlessly?
So it really depends on the one that's the whiteboards. A lot of the software comes populated with little characters and images that you can just click and drag into the screen, so you don't really need to know how to draw. But if you want to create a specific image, you can also do that. On the cartoon videos, those usually require somebody with more graphic skills. Good question. So let me see, was there any other one that people wanted to see?
I'm afraid we delivered so many webinars on how to convert training to the online setting that everyone already knows about all the options. But yeah, why don't we cover them all?
Well, no, I mean, I want to save time. I don't want to waste time with things that people don't know. I did see somebody pick interactive e-learning. So I do want to give you a look at that really quickly, and then we'll move on. So interactive e-learning is a more sophisticated style of online learning modules. They typically run in a horizontal fashion, kind of like the interactive slideshows. But you can do a lot more with the interactions. So for instance, here's one of our courses. This is our ethics course. And here we've given a lot of different situations, and we ask people, what should you do? And then they can choose an option, and based on their option, it says, that's not such a good response. Or, no, that's not a good response either. Oh yeah, that's a good response. And you can move on to the next one. And then here what happens is it says, okay, let's think about this from our ethical compass. And you can put your cursor over any one of these 4 points, and it brings up more information. So you can do these, you can embed videos, you can do branching. It's much more sophisticated, which means that it's difficult to create. It does require special software. And unlike the ISOLM ones, this one is a little bit harder to learn how to program, so it takes people with a special skill set. So these are a little bit more difficult to do. So I understand that there was a question before about, which software should I use? And so I want to come back to that and say that I really would prefer not to answer that question directly, because frankly, you know how software is. It changes every, 6 months to a year, and there's always some new version and some new product out there. So rather than telling you which ones I like, which may be a little bit older, what I would suggest is going to this site, capterra.com. It is a fantastic site for any kind of software of any variety that you're looking to buy. And you can put in keyword searches, like you could search for video making software or e-learning authoring tools, and it brings up a list of all of the products in that category that are out there in the marketplace. It has professional reviews of them, it has consumer reviews, and it has a direct link to their site. So it's a really good resource, even if you're not doing online learning. If you just want to buy, video software or, accounting software, whatever kind of software you're talking about, this is the place to go. Well, now that you know what options currently exist, the next question is, how do you choose the best one for your project? And let's assume now that at this point, you know what courses you're going to put online. And I hope you know who the audience is. And you also know that you want some kind of a self-study option. So the question is, which one should you use? Which is the correct one? So how do you choose? Do you just base it on whatever seems to be the most interesting or the most fun? No, you have a number of factors to consider. So let me ask you in the chat box, please write in, what would you consider as you make this decision? What are the factors you would consider as you decide which of the options you're going to use? Go ahead and write your answer in the chat. Okay. So the target audience and their preference, right? The one that supports my presentation, the different learning styles, absolutely. How tech savvy, you got it. What suits the learning I want to deliver, excellent. What the content's all about, you've got it. These are excellent answers. The age, I assume you mean the age of the learners. The cost and the ease of use, absolutely. The learner's access to technology, great answer. You know, you've hit most of them. Here are the big considerations. So the purpose of training, you know, what are you trying to accomplish with this training? Are you trying to inform people, or are you trying to build their skills? In general, the more you want to build skills, the more interactivity the learner needs. So another consideration is the frequency of the content changes. This is one we often forget about. In general, the fancier the delivery method, the longer it takes to create it and the harder it is to change. So if you know that your content is pretty stable, like you're teaching somebody how to read an income statement, well, that really hasn't changed in 50 or 60 years. So you can go pretty fancy with that because you're pretty sure that nothing's going to change. But if you're putting out training on a new policy that your company is using, most likely that policy is going to change, or that process is going to change over the next 6 months as people start to use it. So for that, you want to pick a delivery method that's going to be easy to edit. So usually that means something a little less fancy. A third thing is learners' availability. How much time does the learner have available for training? In general, the shorter the training time, the less interactivity is possible, and the more the learner gains knowledge rather than builds skills. So you really have to look at these kind of in connection with each other. The development schedule, that's another one we tend to forget about. How quickly do you need to make the training available? Is this something where the client comes to you, today is Thursday, and they say, hey, I need something by Tuesday? Or are they coming to you and they say, 3 months from now, we're going live and we need this? In general, the fancier the delivery method, the longer it takes to create. So if you need to get out something by Tuesday, probably just a document or a recording of a webinar is going to be a better bet. Ease of creation, this goes right along with development schedule. The fancier it is, the more time it takes. And it's not just the time, it's also who has the skill set. And it's not just for creation, it's for maintenance too. If you have to update this, how easy is that going to be to update and change? Do you need to bring in a certain specialized skill person all the time, or can anybody do it? Assessment requirements. Another one we tend to forget about. That's, you know, do you need to know what, to have like a score of how people acquired their skills or knowledge? Do you need to be able to test that? If you're going to have to test their skills and knowledge, then you need to give them more of a chance to build that skill and have some interactivity. And finally, the one that many of you mentioned is learners' access to and comfort using technology. How easily can the participants access that technology? And how comfortable are they using computers or cell phones? In general, the less interactivity, the easier it is to appeal to learners who are not comfortable with or who do not have regular access to the internet or to digital devices. So each of these self-study methods has their benefits and their drawbacks. So by comparing what each method does well and in what situations it is best used, you can make better decisions about which one to use. So for instance, if we start with ease of creation, if you just look at the ease of creation option, here you can line up all of the options from easiest to create to hardest to create. And basically study which way these are listed, because what happens is when you move to another criteria, this listing switches. So if instead of ease of creation, if we go to level of interactivity, look what happened. The beginning ones are the same, but all these in the gray or the green, they've all changed order. So what this is saying is that the best option for your project is going to change depending on which factor you consider. In fact, though, you need to do more than just look at each factor in isolation. You also need to compare them against each other. So it's pretty hard to compare 10 factors against each other. So we recommend you start out by looking at 2 and using a 2x2 matrix. So by comparing any of these, you get a better picture of which might be the best option for your particular project. So in this one, for instance, on the vertical axis, you have the level of participant interactivity from low to high. And on the bottom axis, you have the course purpose. Is it for information sharing or for skills building? And remember what I said earlier, that in general, the more you want to build skills, the more interactivity you need. So if your priority is that you need to build skills, then the only options that are not so good are these 3 here in the corner, which are the self-running presentation, the cartoon video, and the webinar recording. Those are really better just for information sharing. Beyond that, any of these are probably fine. The ones up here are probably the best because they enable more interactivity. But how likely is it that these are your only 2 priorities? Probably pretty low. So what happens if you look at these options through 2 other lenses? So take a good look at what the lineup is here, because now I'm going to switch to 2 other factors. And look what happens. Whoa, the picture's completely different here. So now on the vertical axis, we have the development time, which is how long does it take to create that finished training project, from we can do it pretty short to a pretty long time. And when is the training start date deadline? We need this training in a couple of weeks, or we need it in a couple of months. So if your priority is that you need to start delivering the training in less than a month, then the live action video and the interactive e-learning become less attractive because they take too long to produce. If your sole priority is just getting something out quickly, then the self-running presentation and the webinar recording and possibly the document are probably your 2 best bets. And so now you might be wondering, well, but what about the purpose of your training and the level of interactivity? Well, frankly, that's where judgment comes into play. In reality, you're balancing priorities and options. If you decide that getting out anything quickly is the main priority, then go with whatever is quicker. But if you decide that the priority is a combination of the speed of delivery and interactivity so that you can build those skills, then the balance shifts a bit. So for instance, if we go back, now you can compare those 2x2 matrices. And what you see is that you can choose from the overlap. And in our example, the overlap is the infinite scroll online learning module or the interactive slides. You could possibly go with the whiteboard video here too, but that's slightly over the weeks requirement and into the month's requirement. So that might not be so good too. By the way, if you're interested in seeing more of these comparisons, go take the online learning version of this webinar, Creating the 24/7 Classroom, on the Grow Learn Connect website. It has a whole bunch of these and it shows you how to compare and it gives you more explanation. Again, keep in mind that a lot of this is based on judgment rather than on hard, fast rules. The exact placement on the grid also depends on what software you're using. The amount of possible interactivity, the ease of development, and the speed of development are especially impacted by the choice of software and the time, because as newer versions come out, it makes things easier. For instance, it used to be that live action video was the most difficult to create because you had to have professional camera equipment and actors and everything like that. But since video cameras on everybody's cell phones has become so much more popular and YouTube is there, we've gotten used to seeing a lot lower quality live action videos. And so now that's become a lot quicker and less expensive way than it used to be. So think of these charts as guidelines rather than rigid rules. So that's a lot to think about. So let me take just a moment now to answer your questions on some of these, and I'll turn back on my camera as I promised. So Anna, did we have any other questions that came up?
I haven't really seen anything on top of what we were discussed. So let's see.
All right, if you have a question, you can write it in on what we've just discussed. All righty, good. I haven't lost anybody yet. That seems to be the case. Well, great. Well, you know, if you have questions, you can always write them in. We'll have another period towards the end for more questions. But I'm going to go on now and let's jump ahead and assume that you've picked a delivery method. Oh, I do see one question before we get into that, which is, can the methods be combined? And that's a great question, Daniel. The answer is yes. You can create a video and embed it in an interactive e-learning course. It's a great way to do it and to make things more interesting. Also, you can take a video and create it in either any of those interactive e-learning ones and add a knowledge check at the end and make that your whole course too. All right, so let's jump ahead now and assume that you've picked a delivery method. Now it's time to create that online course. So let's talk about what are good practices for creating online learning. If you have taken the Grow Learn Connect program's Foundations of Learning's course already, you've probably learned that our project management methodology is based on the training life cycle. So I'm curious, by a show of hands, using your raise hand icon, click to raise your hand if you have taken the training life cycle course on the Grow Learn Connect platform. All right, I see 1, 2. I recognize some of you from courses that I've taught you. So there should be more than just 2 people who have taken this, because I know we've gone over this. So thank you, Bamki and Ahmed, for admitting that you've taken this. And if you haven't taken that course, I strongly suggest that you take it. There's a lot of useful information that can help you make your training programs more effective. They're free, they're available to anybody, and they're also a prerequisite for any of our other courses. So to refresh the memories of those of you who have taken it, but didn't want to raise your hand, and to just give a quick introduction for those who have not yet taken the course, this is the training life cycle. And the training life cycle is the methodology that we use when we create training products. And it consists of 6 phases and 1 competency that touches on every phase. So you start by assessing the performance needs. And this is really just going in and saying, what do you need to the training on? What are the requirements? What's needed? The result of that is called a training needs assessment report. From that, we move into the second phase, designing the curricula. And here we say, okay, what courses do you need to close those gaps? And what order? And who should take them? And what delivery method should we use? And how many hours is it going to take? And what's it going to cost to develop this? And all the answers to that are in what we call the training strategy report. Based on that training strategy report, we go into the third phase, which is designing the learning experiences. And here, that's where we actually create all these products. Once they're created, we facilitate them. In the case of asynchronous training, then it's not so much about facilitating as it is about making it available. And of course, the goal of training is not just to have a nice information session, it's to get people to use what they learned. So supporting the transfer of learning deals with how do you help them to take what they learned in the class and use it in the real world. And then finally, we evaluate the learning. And we want to make sure that the training is meeting its goals and that it's helping people. At the center of all of this is partnering with clients. And this is a reminder to us that at every step along the way, it's important to talk with the client to get their approvals so that there is no surprises at the end. If you want more information on this, you can also go to Grow, Learn, Connect website and download the guide to training. This is an excellent reference tool. It has tips, checklists, questions to ask, all kinds of guidance. It's free, and here's the link for that. Now, for the most part, what you need to do at each stage is the same, whether you're developing a self-study or an instructor-led course. But there are a few additional practicalities for each phase when it comes to asynchronous learning. So let's start at the beginning. Okay, so here we are in assessing. Among everything else you need to assess is you have to confirm the organization's technical requirements. So think about questions like, how do they want learners to access the training? Do they want them to get this from a learning management system, or from an email, or from a website, or from a radio? Find out how they want it, and also what are the security considerations. We used to send courses via executable files through email, but hackers have gotten more sophisticated, so we don't do that anymore. Also, make sure you ask about what is the client interested in tracking. Do they want to know how many people have taken the course? How many people have completed it? What their scores are? How long it took them to complete it? All of that will factor into which choice of delivery method you make. Another thing is to confirm the learner's digital skills and capabilities. So here, make sure you have a good understanding of what learners can do on their digital devices so that you can create training that they can use easily. So let me ask you, and again, you can write this in the chat, what do you think are some questions to ask during your needs assessment to determine learners' digital capabilities? Go ahead and write your answers in the chat. So what questions could you ask to figure out what are your learners' digital capabilities? What can they do? Do the learners have access to computers? Big question, very important. Have they ever taken online learning before? Do they have mobile phones? And if they have mobile phones, are they smartphones or are they dumb phones? Do they have a high-speed internet connection? Are they connected to a network? Absolutely, you've got it. Those are exactly the questions to ask. Yep. All right, also, you want to make sure that you narrow the learning goals. Remember that asynchronous learning is shorter. So it tends to be more focused than more than face-to-face learning. So be clear on what you're trying to accomplish. Now, once you have a sense of what your customer needs, you can start to create the strategy. And part of that strategy is the list of courses, which we call the curriculum. So as you think about the needed courses, durations, delivery methods, remember, as I just said, asynchronous training is shorter and more finely targeted than classroom training. So each of the courses within the curriculum, think of them as more like bite-sized training with just one goal per experience. To put this in perspective, these days, given people's attention spans, the longest you can make a learning experience, like a video, is about 5 minutes. That's all people have attention for, and that's pushing it. And for the interactive self-study courses, those e-learning courses, the real maximum, 90 minutes. After that, people are going to tune out. So what that means is if you had an 8-hour course with maybe 6 big topics that you wanted to cover, instead of putting that together in one course, you create a series of these smaller learning experiences that are focused on just a portion. And your course is really a curriculum. It's the path through all of these different learning experiences. Once you know what you're going to create, then you begin to create the courses. And we recommend creating a script and a storyboard for all types of videos. So I've used 2 terms there. I want to make sure you're clear on them. So let me ask you, what is the difference between a script and a storyboard? Go ahead and write your answer in the chat. What is the difference between a script and a storyboard, especially as it comes to videos? And Megan says that a storyboard shows the visual components. Absolutely. Thank you, Megan. The script is technical. Yeah, the script or the storyboard can be technical in the sense of telling you like how the flow is going to be or how it's going to connect. But the script is usually about the words. And the script is about the words that it's going to have, and the storyboards are about the visual. Absolutely. And I recommend, based on many years of experience, when you create your storyboards or your scripts, do it in slides. Use something like PowerPoint. What I found is that most reviewers have a hard time visualizing the flow of a course solely through words. So if you can show them like even a mock-up of the visual, it makes it easier for them to see the big picture and provide more meaningful edits. And that's important because you also want to get approvals for scripts and storyboards before you develop the actual video. It is much more difficult to fix wording, sequences, or images after you've created the video than before it. Make sure also to match the interactions with the learning objective. Interactivity should do more than just keep learners focused. It should enhance the learning. So if you want to increase knowledge, embed activities that promote discovery or research. So use things like case studies or treasure hunts, virtual field trips, or quiz show type of games, or even just questions that test recall. If you want to build skills, then embed activities that enable the learners to discover, to practice, and to get feedback. So think about using demonstrations, or games, or simulations, or analytical activities, or questions that focus on the application of knowledge. So instead of saying, in math, what does the plus sign mean? You ask a question that is more like, in math, what is 2 + 2? So they actually have to use that knowledge and apply it to get the answer. And if you want to change attitudes, then embed activities that promote discovery and self-discovery. Consider demonstrations, role plays, or hypothetical questions. And once the course is built and approved, then it's ready for delivery. Now, since asynchronous courses are self-study, no real facilitation happens. But it is a good idea to put in place a process or a mechanism so that participants can still get answers to their questions. So again, in the chat, I'm going to ask you a question. What are some techniques that you could use to answer participants' questions from self-study courses? So if you're not together, what could you set up so that they could get answers to their questions? Go ahead and write your answer in the chat. Oh, WhatsApp group. Yeah, very good idea, Vanki. Yeah, that way everybody can see it together. Other ideas? Telegram. A discussion board, Megan says. Absolutely. If you have shared LMS, put out a discussion board. Raiden says use the help desk. Create a help desk and have them be able to go there. Absolutely. You could also have just a simple email address, right? Got questions? Thank you, Shalika. She's reading my mind. Got questions? Email info at blah, blah, blah. You could also have a forum. Also, have a chat available. Yep. You could also do a supplemental Q&A webinar. So, redo the self-study e-learning by Tuesday. And by Tuesday, send me your questions. And on Wednesday, we're going to have a webinar. And the agenda is to answer all of the questions you sent me. So all of that works too. You could even do office hours. So if you think about university, right? The professors in university, they have office hours. They say, I'll be at my desk with my door open from 2 to 4 on Thursday. If you have a question or you want to talk to me, come on in. You can do the same thing virtually. Say, I'll be on Zoom from 2 to 4 on Thursday. There's no agenda, no need to come. But if you have a question or you want to talk to me, here's the link. And they can stay as long as they want. Well, remember that the goal of training is not to have participants complete the course. It's to get them to do something differently. So therefore, making it easier for them to apply what they learned to their daily lives increases the chances of success. And that's the focus of our next phase. So when it comes to supporting transfer of learning, you can embed one-page summary or tip sheets into your self-study programs. And that's really nice because most of those e-learning, those interactive type of e-learnings, they don't really allow for printing. So if you can give them a one-page summary, then that makes it easier for them to use. And similarly, you can also include downloadable tools or templates. And here is my little pet peeve on these. If you're going to include a template for somebody to use, like a spreadsheet, don't give them the PDF version. Put on the course in the downloadable section an editable version. Give them the Excel form so that they can actually use the template and not have to create it from scratch. And finally, we get to evaluating learning. And here I think that actually e-learning has a little bit of an advantage over classroom learning. Because in the classroom, when we want to find out people's reactions to the training, we give them an end of class evaluation form and we say, fill it out. And usually if they fill it out in 2 seconds before they run out of the classroom. Well, online, you can embed an online survey into the course. And they click on a link or scan a QR code. It brings them to something like a SurveyMonkey or some other software where they can take an online survey. And they must complete that to proceed through the rest of the course and to get their certificate. So you can do stuff like that to control it a little bit better. And you can also, even if you don't want to have evaluation forms, you can also use online web analytics tools to help gauge reaction. So something like Google Analytics lets you look at the length of time that people stay on each web page, and that can give you an indication of how interesting each page is to the learners. And finally, remember throughout the process to partner with clients. Get approval before developing the content. Make sure everyone agrees on the wording, the flow, and for videos, the imagery before you construct the course. You can easily miss deadlines and go way over budget by making changes after the video or the interactive e-learning module has been drafted. This is important to remember. Changing videos or interactive e-learnings after creation is a much more complex process than changing it in PowerPoint. There's a lot of rework. So what I like to do to encourage reviewers to review carefully is ask them to submit a written approval of the script or storyboard. And you can do this either by having a cover letter that they have to sign or just asking them in an email to say, I approve. And by doing that, it kind of forces them to really look at this with a much more measured eye. Now, I admit that getting everyone's agreement is difficult before you see a nearly finished product, because most people have a hard time visualizing something in the abstract. And depending on the project, the time it takes to create something can be just long enough for the process or the information to have changed. So that's why it's so important to consider the stability of the information before you choose the delivery option. But even for content that is pretty stable, the temptation can be great to keep editing. So here is my last piece of project management advice. Don't let the great become the enemy of the good. So let me ask you, again, you can write your answers in the chat. What is the problem of going for great? What's the danger here? Go ahead and write your answers in the chat. It takes a long time. Absolutely. You got it, Shalika. It takes a long time and it adds to the cost. It can exceed the budget, exactly. Yeah, it's expensive, you got it. Except for live action videos and interactive e-learning courses, for everything else, you can modify most asynchronous methods fairly easily. So it's better to get the course to the target audience sooner and fine tune later. To Michael's point, exactly. By the time you're great, the info is outdated. Absolutely. It's, so think about that extra effort that it takes to get it from good to great. And is the added value to the learner worth the added cost? This is a really hard piece of advice to follow, both for the client and for you. But try to keep it in mind. In the world of agile project management, they have a really good saying. Good today is more useful than great next week. Well, most of these life cycle tips will help you to develop a product that meets your customers' needs and enables you to build courses on time and within budget. But I want to give you just a few more tips to help you meet your participants' needs even better. And much of the work that we do here at the IFC is used in multiple countries, each of which has their own languages. And the work that you do for your organization might also have translation requirements. So if you know or suspect that your work is going to need to be translated, keep these tips in mind. First of all, limit the use of words inside pictures, especially when you're looking for stock photos to convey an abstract concept. It's really tempting to pick an image that has a concept written in it, just like success does here. The problem is when you go to translate that, and you may be thinking, oh, it's just a stupid little image and word in an image. We don't need to translate that. But if you're the participant and you don't know what that word means, that becomes a point of frustration. So if you use one of these images, you then need to translate that, which gets to be really hard to do because now you have to get into photo editing, and that's a pain. So you're better off avoiding using the words with pictures in it. Excuse me, pictures with words in them. Second thing is limit the use of voice narration. Finding someone who has a good voice in the new language and re-recording the script and translating the script takes time and effort, and that can be expensive. Additionally, some languages take more time and words to say the same things as other languages. So when you translate the audio, you also need to adjust the timing of the visuals. And thirdly, think carefully about using subtitles. Even if it's cheaper to add subtitles than to overdub, keep in mind your audience. Subtitles might not work well for audiences with low literacy rates or for sight-impaired audiences, and it might interfere with the visuals. Now, I mentioned sight-impaired audiences, and that brings up another important point: accessibility and inclusion. Now, these days, we're all very concerned about making sure our courses are gender inclusive, and that's very important. However, it's also important to be inclusive of people with physical disabilities. Luckily, technology can help with that. Well, for people with sight disabilities, screen readers and alternative text make it possible for the computer to read and tell the person what is on the screen. So it would say, picture of an eye close up, and then, and then continue on. And also think about people with color blindness. People with color blindness have difficulty seeing the difference between red, green, blue, and mixtures of these. So some companies have actually developed colorblind friendly PowerPoint templates that you can download for free. Also think about those with hearing disabilities. Closed captioning or subtitles can also help those people understand narration. And beyond sight and hearing, think about people that have hand-eye coordination or fine motor skills issues. They might not be able to move their mouse and click on a little tiny button. So make sure that you can use alternate keystrokes, like clicking on the arrow key to move forward. Now, I mention this because not every authoring tool works with all three of these types of accessibility tools. So it's a good idea before you start investing in software and learning how to use it, that you check out that they have all of these, so that as you go about learning a new software, you're learning one that will serve you into the future. Well, if you like these tips about creating self-study learning and you want to learn more, I highly recommend that you take the full online self-study version of this course. And again, here's the link to that. And this is just one, as Anna mentioned, of a series of courses on converting your training to online. There's also converting considerations for moving the classroom online. This is good if you're just at the beginning and you're debating, should I, what are my options, kind of big picture. From live online to live in the classroom to live online gives you tips for how to do webinars and live online learning sessions. We're here in creating the 24/7 classroom. And there's one final one that's called Mixing It Up, blended learning options for the online class. So this gives you ideas about how you can combine a mix of different learning methodologies, both different e-learning and webinar type. So it's a really good class to give you ideas. So check back regularly to see what other webinars and self-study programs we have added. And also don't forget to download GLC's Guide to Training, which provides many more details on each of these steps and all this information. And that's available on the Grow Learn Connect website. So allow me to quickly summarize what we heard today. We discussed and we saw examples of up to 10 different self-study options, from the very simple document to the fancier interactive e-learning and different types of videos. And we learned that each of these has their benefits and their drawbacks. So you have to really prioritize the factors to consider and see how they compare against each other when you make a decision of what to use. We talked about ways to prevent the endless editorial cycle. And we reminded you that while it is always important to do your best work, sometimes the difference between your best work and very good work is not worth the difference in time or cost. And just as you do with your face-to-face courses, remember to make your self-study courses interactive and inclusive. Keep in mind people who might have special needs, such as those who speak a different language or who have physical disabilities. And finally, if you want to learn more or see more of those comparison charts, take the self-study version of those courses. So that's the high-level overview. And now the question becomes, how are you going to apply what you learned? So one more time in the chat, I'd like you to answer this question. What great ideas are you going to use from now on? How are you going to take what you learned in this session and apply it to the job and to what you do? So go ahead and write that in the chat. What are you going to do differently from now on? Betsy says, great list of considerations to help and on the menu. Thank you, Betsy. What else are you going to think about doing differently from now on when you consider e-learning? Do more of the interactive options. Yeah, very good. Use those cartoon videos. They're fun. The whiteboard ones are a little easier to create than the high-end. Alika's going to consider some other options that she might not have heard of. Excellent. That 2x2 matrix, yeah, it's really good when you have to decide between too many and it starts feeling overwhelming. Use a combination to meet the needs of all learners, exactly. Go to the, oh, I love Lalinda's comment. Go through the GLC online portal lessons. Absolutely, go take them. And also review Capterra. Excellent site, you want to bookmark that. Less text and more graphics, absolutely. I like Michael's comment about balancing time, the whole good to great, and the budgeting. Excellent. Wonderful. I'm so glad this has been helpful for you. So we've got about 5 minutes left. Let me open it up to questions. We'll start with if anybody had written any before, I can answer them now. Or if you have questions, feel free to write them in the chat. So Anna, any questions that were up above?
Karen, it looks like you answered most of the questions. Thank you very much. I just wanted to remind everyone that I also put the link to the SurveyMonkey survey. So we are always very, very grateful when you provide feedback and when you come up with new ideas for new webinars. So thank you very much for that. Right, some other links that I just put in chat include the link to our group on LinkedIn. So if you would like to stay in the know of the new courses or the new events that the GLC is organizing, please do join us on LinkedIn. And finally, I just wanted to remind everyone, as Graham has suggested, please register for the Beyond the Known conference, especially if you would like to make a presentation. Definitely you have lots of experience and we would like to share, to hear from you as well. As far as questions are concerned, Michael is asking, any experience out there with Doodly?
I am not familiar with that one. I don't know what that is exactly, so I apologize. It may be kind of another whiteboard one. There's a lot of different ones to create those little quick whiteboard videos. And maybe that. I don't know that one in particular, Michael. I apologize.
Maybe someone else has experience with Doodly and can share it. Angela, I'm sorry, I guess I missed your question. Do you mind repeating it? Or maybe you can open your mic and just, say it out loud.
Michael, in the meantime.
Angela, please go ahead and mute yourself.
Hi, Anna. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I was asking how we can ensure participants all fill their evaluation forms when it's a virtual training. What I find is that some people don't fill it and they leave. And so how do you ensure that all participants fill the evaluation before they leave the class? Thank you.
It's always a tricky question. Like I said, you can embed it instead of putting it right at the bottom, put it a little bit higher up, you know, maybe 3 or 4 slides from the bottom of a online course. And that way, in order for them to finish, they have to go through that. And you can, depending on what kind of software you're using, and especially if you have a learning management system, this works better if you have one. You can set it up so that in order to get their certificate of completion, they must have completed all of the activities, including that evaluation. So that actually brings up a really good point that most of these you can put directly on a website. But if you want to do things like ensuring that people have completed all the steps, or you want to send automatic certifications, then it pays to put this on a learning management system, because that can help with that. So it comes back to, you know, the technical requirements at the beginning. What do they want? Do they want to make sure this is done? You know, and how critical is that? If so, you're going to need a learning management system. And if not, you can just also, as Raiden says in his comment, that they withhold completion certificates until they complete the feedback. Vini says, yeah, but a lot of times it's not genuine feedback, even if it's filled. Yeah, you know, that you can't really help too much. That happens in the classroom too. What I find is generally the people who are either highly satisfied or highly dissatisfied will give the most detailed feedback, and everybody else gives just kind of a quick cursory thing. You know, those evaluation forms are only good really for measuring immediate reaction, but they don't really measure whether people have truly learned something. For that, you need to give quizzes or practical activities where you can see that they're doing it. And if you want to see that they're actually using this, then you have to come back like 6 months later and interview them. You can't see that in the classroom. So you really have to think about what it is that you're trying to accomplish with your evaluation. And also, you know, recognize what it's good for and what it's not good for. And somebody said, what is a learning management system? Sorry. So a learning management system, it's like a combination of a website and a database. And it allows you to do scheduling of training, tracking of training. You upload all your courses to it. It can track all kinds of data, put out all kinds of reports for you. So it's more involved because there's a lot of back-end information that it collects and that it can distribute. It can also do things like sending out reminder notices to everybody who has signed up for a course. So it's kind of a big training coordination software. Well, I believe that brings us to the end of our session. I want to thank you all for your active participation and for your great questions. And I hope this was helpful. And again, if you want more information, go online and take the full version of the course. So thank you so much. Good day, everybody. Good evening to some of you. Good morning to others of you. Have a good time. Take care.
If you're going to end up developing any of the self-study courses, please do share with us. We're curious to know which method you're going to use and how it's going to turn out for you.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you so much.
Enjoy the rest of your night or the day. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And sorry, just a quick comment. I see some of the questions and requests to share the video. Yes, we will definitely share the video with you. It's not going to happen this week. Most likely it will be next week. And I once again apologize if we haven't addressed some of the questions. If you still have any issues or questions, please do reach out to me directly. And I guess you know my email address. Thank you.
Okay. I think I'm going to turn this off now.